Welcome back to the Mental Perk Podcast, where we focus on real people, real issues, and real talk. I'm Carla Hutcherson, a licensed professional counselor and the director for the Hannah for Hope Foundation.
And I'm Brandy Mock, executive board member for the Hannah for Hope Foundation.
We are here to talk about all things mental health, whether it's daily stress, academic pressure, work and career issues, managing a diagnosis, or suicidal and self-harm behaviors. We want this to be a space of honest talk that helps to destigmatize perceptions surrounding mental health issues.
Today, we are speaking with Dr. John Otto of Norman, Oklahoma. Dr. Otto was named 2022 Oklahoma Veterinarian of the Year and is here to speak with us today about veterinarians and suicide rate in his profession and the unique stressors veterinarians face that contribute to the statistics. Dr. Otto, tell us about what made you get into being a veterinarian.
Well, ever since I was probably 8 years old, I loved animals, and I was asking my mom. I was in Virginia, Northern Virginia. I asked my mom if animals had doctors, and she said, "Yeah, they're veterinarians." And I go, "Well, that's what I want to be." And then I asked her if they had to move, and she said no. And I said, "Well, that seals the deal, because as a child FBI agent, we moved about every year and a half, and I got really tired of that fast." And anyway, so I love animals, and you don't have to move. And I've been happy with both ever since. So,
well, that FBI lifestyle had to be pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, it was. My dad ended up being director, so we ended up moving all over the country, and then
wow,
back up in Virginia. So, yeah, it was but I got to see the whole country. But it's just hard growing up as a kid, moving to different schools basically every year and a half, and then I went to a different junior high and high school every year, so 6 and 6. So that was really not very good either. Yeah.
It sounds like animals were a comfort for you back when everything was a little chaotic.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I gravitated to them in the woods. Those are still, to this day, those are places I find solace in. And I still enjoy both tremendously. Animals are unconditional love and, bring you peace, and the woods are the same way. They're just really peaceful and, beautiful. And I don't know, I just find comfort in both. So, yep, that's right.
Well, your profession is near and dear to my heart because my daughter is in vet school. She's starting her second year, so that's exciting.
Wow. Yeah, it is. It's a great profession. I absolutely love it. In fact, I was looking at my calendar, and tomorrow I've got an extern or intern coming to visit with me for a couple of weeks and, mentor her. And I've been mentoring her ever since she got into vet school. And now she's in her 4th year, which is hard to believe. But, yeah, it's a great profession. You can do so much with it. You can teach, you can do research. You can be in the Army. I mean, you can be private practice. You could do pharmaceuticals. I mean, it's just about anything. That degree allows you to do so many things. And they're so interesting. But I absolutely love what I do. I love the animals. I love my clients, and it's not one day is ever the same, that's for sure. It's a very interesting profession.
Well, today I wanted to talk to you about veterinarians and the suicide rate that we're learning about. Can you talk to me a little bit about why the suicide rate is so high with veterinarians?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting. So a number of years ago, I've had 6 friends, good friends, commit suicide that were veterinarians. And a number of years ago, it started coming to light that our profession we were like number 2 behind dentists for a while. And then I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, we surpassed dentists in suicide rates with veterinarians and being professional. So we're number 1 right now. There are different factors. I've had a couple symposiums on this, and then I've worked hard to get health and well-being as part of the curriculum at our vet school at Oklahoma State University. Just because I got tired of watching it happen, and then like everyone turning their back on it as far as like not recognizing it as an issue in our profession. They're like, oh, if I don't look at it, it'll go away. Well, it doesn't. And when you have so many friends like I have had that have died because of suicide, I just felt like it was time we needed to start recognizing it and doing something about it. So, but there's 4 basic factors. One is we tend to be perfectionists in what we do. We tend to work alone. Often we have our own practice or whatever. So isolationism is another one. And then we work with euthanasia all the time. So we see when something's suffering, our response is to, put it to sleep. And I hate to say it, but I think that's kind of the MO when One, and my profession is starting to have a lot of difficulty with whatever it is, finances, divorce, all the different stresses that can happen. The response is to put it to sleep, and that's, suicide for us. And then the last thing is compassion fatigue. A lot of people don't understand that when we do put an animal to sleep or whatever in that kind of environment, especially the shelters are very difficult environments to work in, but we do feel that. I mean, especially, a lot of times we've known this animal since it was, born or young, and then we've gotten very close with the family, so that, we have tremendous empathy as veterinarians too. That's just one of the common traits of a veterinarian. So we feel the loss tremendously. Our staff feels the loss, and I think it's really good to talk about it after something like that's happened. We do it as a staff, kind of decompress and what happened and that sort of thing. So yeah, those are 4 major areas, and that's what makes us prone to suicide.
Yeah, and do you think that schools are doing enough to train vets how to really develop a level of comfort with the idea of death and really what the cycle of life? I mean, are they preparing them for what that looks like in school?
No, I would say it's better than what it was, but the answer is no, it's not quite there yet. 10 years ago, there was zero training, about nothing. And then, like I said, about 10 to 12 years ago, me and some others got really involved with starting to look at this as a real issue in our profession that we really needed to, and look at it not just like in response to suicide, but as a prevention to suicide. In other words, start giving skill sets and I'll just give you an example. Meditation. I started doing meditation probably about 15 years ago, as part of by just keeping healthy and well. I do it every night. Well, that's a really good tool to train with. Meditation is a great tool to have, and yoga and other things too. But anyway, so yeah, we didn't do a good job at all. In fact, we didn't even recognize it. We didn't even talk about it. It actually wasn't even discussed when I was in school 30 years ago. So, no, they're better than what they used to be. Like I said, that was part of the curriculum. And one of the things I really fought for at OSU was to get a counselor on call 24/7.
That's a great idea.
When I was in school, we had a counselor, but it was a main campus counselor. It wasn't veterinarian related. And oftentimes it was just like about half the time you couldn't get the counselor, so you'd have to leave a message. Well, when someone's in dire straits, you don't want to be sitting there leaving a message.
Right,
you need someone that's literally on call. So we finally got a counselor in, and then I also had Colorado State has been one of the leaders in this area. So I had a professional fly out from Colorado State to Oklahoma State to talk to the students about mental health and what it is and what we can do to maintain it and help us with some of the challenges that we face uniquely as veterinarians too. I think, just as you guys know, the more we talk about it and the more we shed light on it, the less likely it is to rear its ugly head. So the more education, the more that we discuss it, the more that we talk about mental health as a disease and not just, stigma. And that there is help for it, and that you can get help, and you shouldn't feel embarrassed about it.
That's exactly what we're trying to promote. That's exactly why we're doing this podcast, is we want to make sure people are talking about mental health and realizing there's not judgment about it. This is an illness, and there's lots of things that you can do to help it. One thing that I have read about veterinary medicine is it's long, hard hours, right? And you have all this empathy care, and you're not only dealing with the empathy with your patients, but you've got to manage families and their grief and the emotions they're going through. So a lot of vets take their work home with them more often than not, right? So they don't separate themselves and really do a lot of self-care. Right,
that's correct. We typically, so the 3 top professions that when people look up to them and say, these are the 3 professions people, children, adults look up to are teachers, nurses, and veterinarians. And all 3 tend to be caregivers and empathetic. And so that's one of the traits we have. We tend to take care of others first and not really look at ourselves. But as you know, the only way to truly take care of others is when we take care of ourselves first. Then we can take care of others. And that's really important to get through to people, especially veterinarians, that the only way you're going to be able to help others is if you help yourself first. And that's a hard mindset to change with veterinarians. It is.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that also, I think veterinarians have to deal with they're dealing with their patients, which are the animals, but the families sometimes don't understand veterinary medicine, and they expect things out of their veterinarians that they cannot provide, like cost control, or they feel like that their vets need to do, certain amount of things or medical care that they're not able to provide, or maybe they don't understand that the patient's health is limited and doing more won't help the pet. And so they start to blame the veterinarian, and maybe even, it can turn ugly. It can be very emotional, or they can badger the veterinarian.
Yeah. That's a really good point you just brought up, because I didn't realize that started to become a huge issue in our profession until just, I would say, within the last 6 months, I started hearing about that.
Oh, wow.
Where clients have become very abusive towards veterinarians. And the reason why it catches me off guard, and I really mean it has, because I've never had that happen.
Really? What do you think? What do you think the trigger is? What do you think's caused it?
Well, part of it is, I think, one of the things is I really try to spend a lot of time with my clients. So I don't book 15-minute appointments. I don't do that.
Okay.
I book at least a half hour. If it's a new client and they're coming in with a referral case, with lots of stuff, I will do it an hour. I do not like to rush through my clients and with my staff either. So I really try to spend time. And my favorite part of practice really is the relationship with the client and the animal. I really enjoy that. So I tend to form good, strong relationships with my clients. And I always ask, if there's any questions or if you have any concerns, I really try to stop at the end and listen to what they have to say. Mm-hmm. If there ever is an issue, I always try to address it directly. And if I feel like we haven't met the expectations of our client because of something we did, then I try to correct it right away. I really do, including no charging whatever has happened. Whatever it is, I try to correct it. If I can't, if it doesn't meet their, still after that doesn't meet their expectations, then we have to go our separate ways. But it's very rare that ever happens. And I think it's just because I take a lot of time to listen to my clients and talk to them. So that really, like this bullying, badgering, I think part of that is when we get in corporate medicine, there's expectations. There's, so many clients per hour, so you should be making so much revenue per day. Your average charge per transaction should be $205 per client. And you have all these expectations where you put a lot of burden on it, and you look more towards productivity and numbers and not in people and animals. So I think there's starting to become too much on the number side of things, and clients start feeling that way, like they're not being listened to, that all it is about money. Every time I come in, you want to charge me more, that kind of thing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then I think there's the anger that comes next with that. You're not really caring about me. You're caring about the almighty dollar. Yeah. And then the anger comes out of that. I think that's part of what's happening now. I'm not sure, though. I'm speaking without reference to any studies cited. I have not read anything but I have read in magazines that clients are getting angrier and upset more. And it's going to be interesting to see what the American Veterinary Medical Association says about this, because I'm sure they're going to do some research on it, because it is becoming, in fact, I've even had some vets say that they're carrying guns now or have guns on them.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really scary to me.
And I think that, and we see this even in schools right now, that it's easier to bully kids because of social media and being able to do things anonymously. Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel that it's easier for people to write these bad reviews or to attack without, because they can do it anonymously and they can do it without having to confront the person directly. But they can also ruin people's careers and make people's lives miserable.
Right. Yeah. And it does happen. Again, I'm fortunate. I just say, most of my new clients come either by, I do a lot of work with shelters, so I offer free exams for shelters, but it's word of mouth and then Google or whatever. That always were ranked high. So I just, I don't even advertise, to be honest about it. It's just word of mouth and Google, and then the shelter stuff that I do. And it all seems to work out really well. But yeah, I guess that, especially with young kids and social media stuff and the badgering, bullying, and really hurting people when they don't take much responsibility for what they've done. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So that's not right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that schools are doing enough to train vet students in conflict resolution, communication skills, how to really relate to your patients?
Mm-hmm. Well, they're starting to address it. Again, like 10 years ago, there wasn't much done with that. There just really wasn't. Wasn't looked at, there weren't skill sets being taught to how to resolve conflicts. Okay. I've been real active with OSU and curriculums and all that. And one of the things I did probably maybe 15 years ago now was I really advocated to get cameras in the exam rooms.
Wow, yeah.
So that they could record the interactions with clients and with staff too. Staff's very important. You got to bring staff into this too, because there is a third leg on this, and that's the staff. And if the staff is not being treated well or is not happy, then there's another parameter in this that affects relationships and well-being, just besides the client vet and the vet, but staff as well. But anyway, you can watch yourself kind of objectively from the camera's view as to how you do and how you interact with clients and, again, the staff and the animals. So I think it's important to look at that and get feedback. And the more you do, 80% of veterinary medicine is client communication. It's tremendous.
Right. Yeah.
You don't have that. You don't have a productive, healthy veterinary practice. You just don't. You have to have really good client communication.
Well, and when you don't have that communication, which I know we experienced not too long ago, is
right.
I mean, people, it actually makes you go, do you realize this is our family member that we're concerned about? It's amazing. And then I start to see I can see the frustration that some of these families are having with the veterinarians that are not responding, or like you said, the staff or overcrowding, or, the money situation. And that it's hard. It's hard seeing that whenever someone comes in and they have a loved fur baby and they can't afford to take care of it. And then the stress it puts along you guys. Now, I've read recently that according to an article published in 2019, a study that found that the female veterinarians are up to 3.5 times more likely to kill themselves than members of the general population. Do you find that there's a difference between the male vets and the female vets, or do you think it's kind of just a combo of both?
Well, that's interesting. So I have not heard a lot about that, what you just said, but I will say this, there's 80% more female vets in school now than male vets.
Okay.
So that has really shifted since that started happening right when I was graduating in 90. So before then it was like 50-50, and then it was the reverse. It was like 70-30, 70% men, 30% women. So it's definitely changed. The dynamics have changed. I think part of on the woman's side of things, and I can't really, from experience, I can't, of course, directly talk to this, but one of the issues that's very difficult, and the practice is changing that way, is that often women have children, and it's the balance between working full-time and trying to take care of kids and, the household and all that's very, very stressful. And you don't feel like you're doing an adequate job of any, and that becomes very frustrating. The interesting thing is, though, I've had my own practice for 28 years now. And we started having kids right when I first started my own practice. One of the things that I did not want to have happen is what happened with me and my dad is my dad was never home. He was always traveling or working cases on weekends, kidnapping, bank robberies, that sort of thing. One of the things I did not want to do is lose that contact with my kids. So I was often the one taking them to school and picking them up because I had my own business. So I could move my time around. The problem with some of the women in corporate medicine particularly is they don't have that flexibility.
Right.
So you were told this is your time you're going, and therefore you cannot be with your kids. And it's got to be very hard because I did not do that, nor did I want to. In fact, I closed down one of my hospitals because I was losing that time with the kids. And I was like, what's this, money or time with the kids? Time with the kids, and family. So I just closed the one. And the interesting thing, is productivity with that one hospital doubled. So,
yeah, maybe because more time was spent on it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. So it really, I thought, well, I'll take a drop in income. The opposite happened. Actually, income went up. which was, I still can't figure it out completely what happened, but it did happen. So, but I think that's one of the issues is the lack of family time, guilt with not having that family time, especially with children. And it is the truth, because there was a leadership class being offered about 5 years ago with the Oklahoma Veterinary Medical Association, and I agreed to be a mentor in that thing. And most of who I dealt with were women. One of the issues was this area, and one of the number one complaints was the inability to be with the family, the kids, when they want to.
And I think
I know it's a tremendous deal.
It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is that it's hard to separate work and home life, and especially when maybe, and we've talked about the empathy part of your job, and if you've had to put 3 or 4 or 5 patients down in a day, you're going to carry that with you all the way home, and that affects your home life.
Yes, it does, and you're right, and that is extremely. I've ended a few days with 2 or 3 euthanasias at the end. The reason why they do it at the end is because they don't want anybody else, in the building. You know what I mean? So we now have our own euthanasia room, which has its own door, which I love. So when I added on to my practice, I put that in. It's a nice large room. It has candles, it has nice music, beautiful paintings in it, very comfortable room. We can either do it on the floor or on a table, depending on the animal and the client. And then it has its own exit, so they don't have to go around. But yeah, when you're in the day with 2 or 3 euthanasias at the end, you go right home and everyone's happy and jumping around. It's hard.
It is.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
How hard is it when you're having to put an animal down simply because a family can't financially take care of that? It just, for you, it's got to be, or any vets, it's got to be just hard to look at the animal and know that you're fixing to do what you're doing. How hard is that for you guys to? It's very difficult. Often I'll tell you, if it's kids involved and if it's something surgical I can take care of, a lot of times I'll just have them sign the paper and then I'll just take care of it, because I don't like to do it, to be honest about it. And I have my own practice, so I can afford to do that kind of thing. I tell you where it's really hard, and I did this for 14 years. I volunteered at the Norman Animal Shelter. When you put down a bunch of those animals, and the only reason you're putting them down, they're all healthy, but because they don't have homes. And there were several times, there's 3 times at the Norman Animal Shelter, I had to do complete kills, kill everything, because the disease was so bad. And we had to start over. And so I ended up killing like 50 in a day. Oh, my gosh. And, when you've got like puppies and kittens that are screaming. Oh, gosh.
And let me tell you, you move through like a robot, But at the end, I remember driving down the road, and all of a sudden I would just see the flash of the animals in the alley, 3 deep with urine and feces, and it was just horrible. And then all of a sudden there's this deathly silence. It's just, you could hear a pin drop when you're done. And once, whether it was barking and all that, everything is gone. And I tell you, it is extremely, and there really needs to probably be more done for shelter employees with the passion fatigue because there is such a bad place. Now our Norman shelter, we're so much better. We used to euthanize 97%, but now we actually have the best live release rate of any public municipality in the central part of the country, and we're up to 96.6%. So
I love that.
We've been able to turn that around with education and in-house spay and neuter, which is great. But it is still a very difficult place to be, and more of that occurs as far as euthanizing healthy animals because of no home than any other place that I've seen. So that's still. In fact, I saw the movie with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Right, went out and saw it, and there's a scene in the beginning where Rocket, the little raccoon guy, is in the cage, and there's really dark and dismal. And that reminded me so much of the early days of the shelter. And it brought back a lot of memories sitting there watching it. And I had a very, very hard time watching that again. And I think there's probably some sort of, I haven't seen a study done, but there's got to be some sort of level of PTSD that goes with that.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Like that, because I still can see, every once in a while, see a flash come back over the years of a scene like that there. And it's very hard to get over, and it's hard to rationalize too what you just had to do.
Yeah, and the high numbers of depression and anxiety that go along with that, and I can imagine what you just described leading to trauma and PTSD, and it kind of takes us to that statistic: 1 in 6 veterinarians have seriously considered suicide. That's just staggering to me. That's mind blowing.
Yes, Yes, I saw that stat too. And again, I went to a funeral. His name's Joe Bills Reynolds. I can use his name in his past. Joe Bills had a hard time, and one of the issues he was dealing with was drugs and alcohol. But he had a beautiful family and 2 young kids. And anyway, he killed himself in a parking lot, not too far from his house. And I went to his funeral, and they had a big cutout picture of him holding up a fish with his boys next to him at the celebration for his wife. And God, his wife was up in the front row, crying with the two boys. And I was looking at that picture, and I was just like, damn, we have got to start doing something. I am tired of going to these funerals. And then you hear these scholarships, right? In the spring we have scholarships for the vet students. And, I'd sit there and everyone's like applauding for someone receiving the scholarship. But I know about 30% of those are scholarships because the people have killed themselves.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just like, and I'm just like, there's a happy and sad part to this. But,
sure.
And one of my classmates just kicked around and killed himself with a train. He just went and parked right in front of the train tracks, and it hit him, killed him. And, so again, I'd see his mom there. I give her a hug, at the awards banquet thing. But then again, I know it's because he killed himself, So I just got tired of this. We got to start talking about it. We got to start addressing it.
Yeah.
We got to start working with the students early, not later when there's attempts for suicide, but early before the suicide thoughts and plans start. And we got to start showing them a network of support and coping skills and life skills to help them through this. And then also to show them how it's okay to ask for help, that it's not being weak, it's actually being strong.
But it's like
when you do that, you help others.
Right. And it's like you said, though, it starts with those students in good institutions that have a strong leadership, that are making sure they're mentoring their students properly and preparing them and comforting them, knowing that they can ask any questions and that they can come to them whenever they're been put situations that are they're struggling emotionally. I mean, it's I can't imagine. Now, with your friends that have completed suicide, Dr. Otto, did you see any? I mean, obviously drinking and that kind of thing can lead up to it, and those are kind of signs. But were you shocked? Have you been shocked with the suicides of your friends, or did you see things?
Yeah. Well, there's a few of them I knew had issues with drugs and alcohol. So that's, you look at different things, depression, things like that, anger, and so there's certain signs, personality changes, withdrawing, that sort of thing. Some, though, were really, they did catch me off guard. I had one guy, he had 3 kids and a beautiful wife, and he shot himself, and that was Shane Eckhart's his name. Again, it's the Eckhart scholarship thing, Again, I would sit there and see those 3 kids and him. I remember him studying. He was a year ahead of me. And that just caught me really off guard. I don't know what exactly happened with that. I know he liked to drink and stuff, but I didn't see any patterns of abuse. But again, I don't know what happened there. I don't know. It's just sometimes you can see it and sometimes you can't. That's why I think it's so good to just lay the tools down early so that they're willing to or able to pick those up, whether it be asking for help, going to get counseling services, therapy. That's, there's such a stigma about that now that when you get professional help, you're weak, blah, blah, blah. No, I really try to tell people you become better a person when you ask for help and get that help. You just do.
Yeah, I love that message. I love that message. That's what we've really been, we're trying to get people to understand their strength in asking, their strength in talking about it. And so that message is just so on point with what we're trying to do here at Mental Perk, is just really trying to get people to say, that's a sign of strength. Being vulnerable and asking for help is a sign of strength.
Yes, it is. And oftentimes so many of these, little guys, or some of them were girls, but I just know that they couldn't ask for help. It's thought of it as being weak, and it's not. And I think it's important for people in my profession or any profession to come out and say, I've gotten help, I've needed help, blah, 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 and it's helped me. And it's not because I'm weak. It's made me stronger as a human being and more comfortable with myself. And it is the truth, and that's one thing I've really tried to give to the students is that, there is help. You can get help, and this is how help works.
Well, I think it'd be great. I really think it'd be great if these learning institutions would really seek the advice of professionals like you and actually design a course within their program that teaches these veterinary students about mental health and the need to take care of themselves and what that means and what that looks like.
Because I often wonder how you think about it, Dr. Otto, how prepared do you think, or Carla, you guys, how often do you think these students are prepared for a lot of the tragedy, honestly, that you guys have to deal with emotionally, financially? I mean, the time management. What do you think, Carla? I mean,
go ahead, Carla. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that we're not prepared enough. That's what I really believe. I feel like that there's so much more that we need to do to make sure that professionals are prepared to deal with these issues.
Do you think they even know, Dr. Otto, when they go into this field, that there's so much involved emotionally do you think they have a clue?
No, I'm afraid they don't. I don't think it's really discussed as much as it should be. And of course it's not, because that's why we're number one in suicide. Right. If we've been doing what we should be doing, we won't be there. That's the point.
Yeah.
The reason why we're number one is because and that's nothing to be proud of. It's something that we should look at and say we need to do something about it, not to look away from it. You know what I mean? And just say, oh, well, that's just the way it is. No, it doesn't have to be that way. We can do things to make it better. And this, again, public education courses, having therapists come in and talk about this is what you can do, and this is how it looks to make yourself healthier, mentally, physically, spiritually. And I really believe that they all tie together, by the way. We're talking about mental health, but I think, when our physical health is good, that affects our mental health. When our spiritual health is good, that affects our mental health.
Right.
So I think there's other areas that we just tend to zero in on the mental part of it, but there are other influencers. And like I worked out today. I went and swam. I went and lifted.
Yeah, exactly.
Usually I go to the park and I go for a walk on Sunday afternoons, and I love that. I love being, like I said, when we started with this program, I love being in nature. I love finding solace in it. I love watching birds, them sing. And it's very important to take that time and take care of yourself. Because if you don't, I had a good friend that did a lot of work with the MERD building bombing. He was an FBI agent. He studied a lot. His postdoctoral degree was in mental health and treatment of law enforcement officers. And he studied the Israelis, who about 90% of the men had PTSD. But he had a saying, he says, you process it or it processes you.
Wow.
And it is so true that if we do not deal with what's bothering us, whatever that is, and we bury it, it'll come out in bad ways. And one of the ways it can come out is suicide.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the things that you're listing are great coping skills. And I think these have to be taught when these students are in vet school. I mean, learning the effects of mindfulness and how to practice mindfulness and distress tolerance and really being able to understand their emotions and regulating them. So there's so many skills that can be taught that you were just talking about that help you with distractions and just being present and in the moment and trying not to stay in those negative thoughts that are really important for students to learn.
Right. Again, we tend to be very hard workers too. And one of the things I do, and I'll be honest, I felt guilty about it, but the longer I've done it, the less guilty I feel. But I've got a log cabin up in northern Minnesota that's just beautiful. And I was going up for a couple of weeks every year. Then I started extending it to 3 weeks, and now I have it up to a month. And I take the entire month of July off, and I go up there and I have my family, my friends, and I really, and at the end, I always tell people, like, I'm doing it right now. I'm telling people I go up from July, 1st, or I'm actually heading up June 28th, and then I'm coming back on the 21st, something like that. Well, really, I'm coming back on the 30th. That last week, it's only John's week. There's no one else up there. And it's my time to myself. And it was by accident that I came across that. I had a couple of friends cancel at the end of one trip when we were actually building the cabin. And I had that last week, and I thought, what am I going to do? How am I? And now I found out I enjoy that time more than any other time. It's my time, and I do whatever I want. That's really important to feel okay with that. especially when you have like the type A personality where you work and work and work, and and I have that, and I'm from the German background. That's how my dad was. So it was very hard for me to give myself permission to relax, but that's very important to do.
That's so important, and I think that's encouraging to hear. Yeah. So I want to talk about real quick when we get ready to close into this. Tell me about what you do for the prisoners, your ministry that you work with the animals. I think that is so amazing, and I think everybody should hear about it.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking about that. It's become one of my passions in life, for sure. I guess it definitely is a ministry now. Just to give you an idea what it's about, go on to YouTube and watch The Dogs of Lexington. It did go to the Emmys. It's a good film. I produced it back in like 2013. Gray Fredrickson, who did The Godfather and stuff, and I worked together on it. So it's a good film. It's called The Dogs of Lexington. It gives a really good overview of what the program's about. But what we do is we take animals from like the shelters, sanctuaries, and then they go to the prison. And I have both programs in a men and women's prison. And then the inmates work with the animals for anywhere from about 8 weeks to 13 weeks, depending what the animal's going to be used for. And they're trained either in basic skills or to become a therapy dog. Like I've got one dog coming out soon too. Her name's Willow. She's going down to Hilden school system because they've had so much trouble there with meth and methamphetamine destroying families. I mean, entire families, the kids going to foster care, the stress on the children, the stress on the staff and everything. So anyway, the dog's going down there and is being trained at Mabel Bassett, the women's prison. So that dog is going to stay probably closer to 13 weeks. But the animals come out and they're fully trained, and then they can go become companion pets. And I work with veterans who have PTSD, who are having a hard time integrating back into society. And especially if they live alone, we can provide them with a companion pet. Widows, like when my mom lost my dad, we got her a dog named Chip as a companion pet. That's how the program was first started at Lexington, was to that's why it's called Friends for Folks. They're providing friends for folks who have lost their spouses. But we do a lot more now, just pet therapy and companion pets in general. And it's a great program, and I've been working it 27 years now. I started in March of '96. So it's really a very interesting thing, and I got to meet Sister Pauline. She's a nun that created the program back in 1980 in Washington State, and amazing lady, terrific. In fact, Hollywood made a movie about her called Within These Walls. And Laura Dern played her, which was a really good movie. But she was an amazing lady.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she had you talk about mental health issues. My God, she was institutionalized 19 times and become a cutter. Tried suicide. She was really something. And when she got into the Catholic faith is when she converted, and she actually quit cutting when that happened. But anyway, it's a beautiful program. It's a privilege to be in it.
And there's so much that pets do for mental health. I mean, it's just amazing how much people's mental health improves when they have pets. And I think that just highlighting that and how therapeutic it is so important.
So much.
Dr. Otto, I really, I love your message today about finding strength and getting help. And I think that's just so important. And we want to make sure that our audience out there understands that if you are struggling, if you are having mental health issues, if you're struggling every day in just crisis, or if you're having self-harm thoughts or suicidal thoughts, if you're having any of those things, we want you to reach out to a loved one, a friend, family, or a mental health professional if you have access to care. If you don't, please dial 911 if you're in immediate danger. You can also call the National Suicide Hotline at 988. There are so many people that are here for you, and talking only helps your situation. So please reach out for help.
Thank you so much, Dr. Otto, for being our guest. We really, truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we want to thank our audience for tuning into Mental Perk. We hope our talk today highlighted real people working through real issues based on mental health. Our goal at Mental Perk is to make sure every one of you knows you matter. You're never alone.